Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. I'm Sean Aylmer, and as always, I'm joined by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekouk.com, TheKouk.com, and on Twitter using the handle @Kouk. Stephen, you're pretty excited at the moment.
I'm very excited. There's so much going on in economics, financial markets, monetary policy, inflation, commodity prices. I don't know where to look.
Currencies, what about them? Euro
well, the
and
US dollar, yes, it's going gangbusters. You know, the euro's back to parity with the US dollar. The Aussie dollar's at 67.5-ish, thereabouts, and huge issues going on all over the place. Too much information is never too much.
That's right. Now, I mean, the really big one, in fact, there was two lots of really, really important information last week. One was obviously the labour force, but also the consumer/business sentiment stuff. Let's start with the labour force. Incredible numbers.
Employment rose by 88,000 in the month of June, an incredible result. The unemployment rate, which was even more staggering, fell to 3.5%. The last time it was that low was 1974, so a fresh 48-year low for the unemployment rate. And it's something that nobody anticipated. Nobody even a year ago was thinking that we'd get much below 4%. So a staggering result. When you look at the number of people unemployed, a little under 500,000, we've actually got more job vacancies in Australia than we do have people unemployed. So it says to me that we're going to get even lower unemployment numbers in the next few months, which is a remarkable thing, and I guess a sign that the economy is still chugging along at a reasonable clip.
And it certainly won't dissuade the Reserve Bank from going hard on rates.
No, well, they're meeting in early August now. I think the big thing for them will be the June quarter CPI, which comes out on the 27th. So that's next week. The inflation numbers, of course, are elevated around the world. We're going to get a high result. I don't think there's any question. It's just a matter of how high will it be. But again, the market's now speculating that, do they go 75? I think 50 basis point hike in early August is baked in. I think everybody's thinking that. And if we get an elevated inflation number in about 10 days' time, then we're going to be having speculation growing of a 75 basis point move. Or as we saw from the Bank of Canada last week, they slammed on a 100-point move, which again, nobody was anticipating. But again, it was their, fight inflation vigil that sort of forced them to go so aggressively.
Do you think, give us a little history lesson here. Last time we had unemployment at this level was the early 1974. We then ran into stagflation on the back of inflation expectations. Is that why central banks are going so hard at the moment?
I think so. I think that lesson from the mid-70s was dreadful, and it took us 15 years to get over it. But even in the US, Paul Volcker, he was chairperson of the Federal Reserve, and he hiked US interest rates to 15, 16% in the late 70s, early 80s to squeeze inflation out. And I remember the debate, fight inflation first. But it even took the US, 7-8 years to get that inflation rate back down. Again, a nasty recession. So that's the lesson. So in a sense, it's a similar sort of thing. And we're hoping that we don't have a recession, of course, but that we can sort of slow the economy sufficiently to get inflation down. And that's the debate that's going on right now. And of course, there are some people, very smart people who are expecting the US to dip into recession in any event.
We think of a recession as a bad thing, and obviously the human toll is very challenging. If you think of it as on the long term, in terms of economic cycles, sometimes they have to happen though, don't they?
Oh, this will get me shot down. It's the Paul Keating recession we had to have in the early 1990s. And, and he's been ridiculed for that. But again, you don't want a recession. You want to try to avoid them because, as you said, the human cost in terms of unemployment, business closures and these sorts of things are not good. And that's why economic policy, tries very, very hard to avoid them. But occasionally when there are excesses in the economy, you need to cut out those excesses in a sense. And one way you can do that is through monetary policy, through aggressive rate hikes. And, certainly slower growth is needed. And then the debate comes, if you go one step too many in terms of your rate hikes, you do get that hard landing for the economy and a recession comes. And that's when you cleanse that high inflation out of the system and you can hopefully go on a path for a decade or so of decent economic growth.
I also just want to mention consumer and business confidence figures out last week. Now, we know the consumer isn't quite as happy as they've been in recent months, but even business confidence has come off just a touch.
Yeah, we know that, yes, the consumers are feeling pretty gloomy. In fact, it's come back to some of those weakest levels that we've seen since the pandemic or the mid-2000s recession. And that sort of fear is in the consumers' minds as they're paying still well over $2 a litre for petrol, and the cost of living pressures are acute, and of course the rate hikes are coming through right now. So that's clear, I guess, in a sense. But the business confidence numbers were okay. They did trend down again. And a lot of the detail of that business report from NAB was that inflation pressures are showing up there. Their cost of opening their doors every morning, if you like, is increasing at the fastest pace on record. So that high inflation rate, while we consumers focus on it, on how much it's impacting our wallet and how much we spend each week, for a business person, it's the cost of the inputs, the widgets, if you like, that goes into the manufacturing process that's causing them to be a bit more fearful of the outlook too. So business not quite as gloomy as the consumer, but nonetheless, there's a bit of a tapering off in business sentiment as well.
This week, not a lot on. I mean, after so much excitement in recent weeks, we've got the minutes of the July board meeting, the Reserve Bank July board meeting. We've got the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Philip Lowe, and Michelle Bullock, who's number 2, the Deputy Governor, speaking. I mean, it's not exactly a rest week because, but maybe you should have a bit of a relaxation though, Stephen, because next week we've got CPI.
Yeah, well, the data flow from the Bureau of Stats is pretty low key this week. I think there's a couple of very, very, very minor indicators that nobody will look at. But as you said, it's Reserve Bank speak this week. So you've got the minutes of the decision to hike 50 basis points earlier this month. So we'll look at that for fine detail on why they chose 50 and not some other number, analysis of inflation, labour market tightness. These sort of things that we've been discussing just a moment ago will be part of the entrails of the minutes. But perhaps more importantly, because here we are, a few weeks after that decision to hike rates earlier this month, we've got the governor, as you said, the Deputy Governor, Michelle Bullock, giving talks on the economy. They'll be including, I'm assuming, in their discussion, these recent labour force numbers, the developments in inflation, and really interestingly, the debate that's also starting to brew as commodity prices come off. The oil price is $95 a barrel or thereabouts. It was 120. Lumber prices, which feed into construction, are falling. So are we seeing a turning point in inflation from that leading indicator through commodities? So that's what we'll be looking at the Reserve Bank to give any updates, any insights on.
Enjoy the week, Stephen.
Thank you, Sean.
That was economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kouk. You can find him at thekouk.com and follow him on Twitter using the handle The Kouk. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.